And we're back. This is Hook and Ladder. It's Brett and Terry, and we'll get started with some this week's action. Wednesday night, Coastal Carolina lost to Appalachian State. You saw this one, didn't you?
I saw very, very little of it. I picked Appalachian State to win.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they did, because now we don't have to hear about Coastal Carolina. They were kind of like the new UCF. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited that they lost.
Mm-hmm. Moving right along. Tulane remains undefeated. They might become a factor later on when Cincinnati.
Tulane lost.
Oh, excuse me. SMU. I can't talk right now. Anyway, SMU continues on 7-0. Mm-hmm. That's going to help Cincinnati strengthen the schedule later on this season.
21 in the country.
Number 21, correct.
Undefeated. FPI has Cincinnati had an 84% chance to win that game, which is the lowest FPI percentage to win for Cincinnati the rest of the way. The rest of the remaining games then were in the 90 percentiles.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. Moving right along, speaking of Cincinnati, they knocked off Navy 27-20. I remember seeing some of this game at your place. Mm-hmm. Well, I saw it going across the screen, and Cincinnati was up, I think it was
they were up like
13-10.
Yeah.
And then they came out in the half, scored 14 points, and then Navy got 10 points in the fourth quarter to make it look
got a little dicey. This game was pretty close, and Cincinnati doesn't need that. Cincinnati needs to win these games with some style points. Yeah, they win decisively. So they got to beat SMU. They got to obviously go undefeated, and they got to do it in convincing fashion and look good doing it. Not sure if that's going to happen or not. I believe Cincinnati deserves to be in the playoffs if they finish undefeated and win the conference title, just like they did last year. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think they're going to finish undefeated and win the conference title. I think teams are going to jump them and get in. That's just my point of view. Nothing against Cincinnati. I like them. They're a good football team. Yeah. They're fun to watch. But I think they're going to get hosed.
I just don't know, because I'm watching some of these games, like the one that we're about to talk about, Oklahoma against Kansas. Oklahoma just scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to win this game.
Mm-hmm. They got shut out in the first half, and Kansas kind of screwed themselves too in the second half out of a touchdown. They keep winning, and we keep saying on this show every week, survive and advance, survive and advance. There comes a point where that doesn't apply to a team like Oklahoma. When you're undefeated, but you've won almost every game, very close fashion. You didn't look good doing it. They're not covering spreads. Elite teams don't just win, they cover spreads. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma isn't doing that. Caleb Williams is awesome. That play, he stole the ball from the running back and got the first down and basically sealed the deal. That was awesome. One of the most heads-up plays I've ever seen, and it came from a true freshman starting in his second game. But their defense isn't very good. And if you stop them from running the football, you're kind of probably going to beat them if you have any decent team at all. Mm-hmm. I just don't think they deserve to be in the top four.
Yeah, well, they're going to stay there till they lose.
Yeah, I mean, they're ranked higher than Ohio State. I think Ohio State's leaps and bounds better than Oklahoma.
I would agree with that. Tennessee, Alabama, I watched the tail end of this. Tennessee was in this game till probably about maybe 8 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. And, Alabama decides to turn the screws there at the end. But
it was fairly close, and then all of a sudden Alabama just does Alabama things, and next thing you know, it's like a 21-point swing, and you're like, how did we get to this score?
Right.
Tennessee was hanging with them really well first half. Alabama had some pretty bad and glaring defensive breakdowns, especially in the secondary and tackling. Mm-hmm. They fumbled in the red zone too, which kind of helped Tennessee, because that easily would have been a minimum field goal, but probably a touchdown. Yeah. Tennessee looked pretty good. They looked a much, much improved team. But Alabama just looked like Alabama. I mean, there were times I felt the offensive line was just letting all the guys from Tennessee go through. But, Alabama does what they do.
It seems like Alabama is where, they've got superior talent on the field. They're not putting the whole game together at all.
And if they do, it's going to be scary because these guys, they've got a loss, but they can easily just run the table and win the title.
Right. Ohio State knocks off Indiana 54-7. They called off the Dogs in the third quarter there.
Mm-hmm.
This was
30 points in the second quarter.
I flipped over there and it was like 44-7. I was like, oh, well, this is not really a game. Yeah. Indiana's 2-5 on the season.
Yeah,
Ohio State.
That gauntlet of a schedule that Ohio State's got to play in the Big Ten. Although, to be fair, they've got 4 games coming up against pretty good teams. Most of them are ranked. I think Purdue lost yesterday, so they'll be unranked. But still, Ohio State's got the best offense in the country, in my opinion. Now, that guy, Travion Henderson, I think his name is, true freshman running back, 5-star. Dude's awesome. See, CJ Stroud's, finding his stride. And every time I watch Ohio State, what jumps off the screen to me is whenever dudes like Chris Olave or that other guy they got, I forgot his name, whenever they throw a deep ball, they're literally 10 yards past the nearest defender. I mean, not even close. I wonder how that's going to go when they start playing elite defenses, but that every single year, their wideouts are awesome and they're wide open.
Yeah, no. Moving right along, Michigan, who Ohio State will play at the end of the season, wins 33-7, remains undefeated, which I think that's going to play a huge role later on in the whole who's getting in and who's not. But 33-7, total domination.
They got a tough game next week against Michigan State in East Lansing. But if they can win, they're in the top 5, and that sets up a top 5 showdown at the end of the season with Ohio State. I still think Ohio State's much better than Michigan. But Michigan is kind of, they're 7-0. Are they back? I would say so because this is a better record than they've had the last few years so far. So.
And a game we saw the tail end of, the Penn State-Illinois game. It was 8 overtime.
Boring.
20-18.
9 overtimes.
9 overtimes. Penn State had no business losing this game, and they managed to lose this game.
Penn State has now played in the 2 most boring games of the year. The opener against Wisconsin, and then this one. I watched this entire game. Had a buddy over the house, Jerry, huge Illinois fan. We watched this game at the house. Had some other games on as well. Watching this game, and I was just like, so this is what watching bad football is like. Penn State has no business being ranked number 7. They're not good. Ohio State's going to crush them when they play. They're just not they've got guys. They've got some talented guys. They just couldn't put anything together yesterday. Yeah. Illinois is not good at all either. No. So it's not a huge
Illinois'
shock
problem
to
is
stop
not,
them.
They're not.
Yeah, Penn State, they need to go unranked after this. Illinois is not a great team.
Right.
Not difficult to stop them. The running back ran for like 200-plus yards on him. And that's Illinois. After Brett Bielema just called out his offensive line saying these guys basically aren't good enough to be playing Division I football. Right. And they give up that kind of those rushing numbers to Illinois. Penn State's got to figure it out, or they're going to just get embarrassed a couple times the rest of the way.
They're looking like an 8-win team right now. Oklahoma State does what Oklahoma State does every year, lose a game they shouldn't lose. 21-24, Iowa State. Iowa State goes to 5-2. And, that's just Oklahoma State being Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State loses a head-scratcher every year, although they were the underdog in this game. Iowa State was favored. Iowa State's really not all that good either. I think Oklahoma State's not a bad football team. Neither one of them are bad football teams. But, it's just going to – I don't know. I think it kind of makes the Big 12 look a little bit better, a little bit more parity in the conference. I still think much like Ohio State with their remaining games are the toughest games on the schedule, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma's remaining games are the toughest games on the schedule for those 2 teams as well. So we're kind of this end of October into the month of November, we're going to kind of see, what's what in those conferences and who's going to separate themselves. But not a really good showing by a team that has playoff aspirations like Oklahoma State this year. So
Oregon knocks off UCLA. UCLA is playing very well for being what they are. They're 5-3. Oregon remains 6-1. That big win with Ohio State still hanging there, and they're still in the playoff discussion. But they've got to start winning games in more decisive fashion. Yeah,
I watched all this game. It was entertaining. Oregon kind of jumped out to a fairly, it wasn't a big lead, but they were taking it to them in the second half, third quarter, and then they kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit, let UCLA come on back. They were up, I think, 10, and then they let UCLA come back in. Quarterback Thibodeau had 4 or 5 sacks in this game. He knocked out the QB for UCLA. Backup comes in, throws a pick to end the game. Oregon at number 10, like you said, with that win over Ohio State, in the driver's seat in the Pac-12 North Division, with a showdown with conference undefeated Oregon State coming up. That should be a good game. It's called the Civil War. That should be a good game to kind of decide the fate of the Pac-12 North. Oregon's a good football team. They beat Ohio State. Ohio State's ranked ahead of them. Their loss is to an unranked Stanford. To be fair, after Stanford beat them, they kind of went on a little run until last week where they got beat by Utah, but still.
Right.
I think Oregon's got something to prove. They can go win the conference, one-loss conference champ versus one-loss conference champion. You got to look at the head-to-head.
Absolutely. Moving right along, Ole Miss knocked off LSU. A pretty dominant fashion, 31-17. LSU scored 10 points in the fourth quarter. Ole Miss just keeps on winning.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't really looked as good as they did that first game against, what was it, Louisville. But yeah, Matt Corral just keeps, that Heisman train rolling for him. LSU, what are you going to say? Coach just got fined on Monday or Sunday. They've got nothing really to play for except each other, and half the guys are out. So
right. I think they get a bye week, then they get Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving right along. Notre Dame knocked off USC and another team, 6-1. I think if they're undefeated, or they continue to go 11-1.
I'm not impressed.
I'm not impressed with them either. But
USC, they've got good players. Their wideout, London, is one of the best wideouts in the country. They suck. They're not good at football, at all. I have no idea what the problem is, but they've been like this the last 4 or 5 years. They're just not that good, and they lose games, and they really shouldn't lose because they got superior talent. I'm not saying against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a good football team, but a lot of, they've got 4 losses.
Right.
So, I'd like to see them get back to what they used to be, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, not right now anyway. Wake Forest remains undefeated. They're 7-0, 16 in the country. They get in a shootout with the Army. They won 70-56. It's like a basketball score. Yeah. Somebody was saying this morning on ESPN, if they went out and win the ACC championship game against Pitt, because I think Pitt now's got a 3-game lead on that side of the conference, that they will get in ahead of a Cincinnati. If it plays out with other teams lose. Right.
And I thought that was interesting because these guys are sitting at 16 right now.
Yeah.
But
there's still a lot of football to be played.
Nobody knows what the damn playoff committee is going to do.
No.
They keep saying, "Oh, we're going to set a precedent with this," and then the very next year they go against the precedent they set the year before.
Yeah, I'd be glad when they go to 8 teams or 12 teams or whatever and get away from this nonsense. Texas A&M continues playing well, 44-14, 17th in the country. That's going to continue on. They're going to be heading up the list. Miami, 33-30 against NC State. I saw something today or earlier last night maybe, like the 18th team in the country has lost every single week.
Really?
Yeah, something crazy like that. So if you were ranked 18th, that means you're going to lose that week.
I'm surprised. Miami's not a good football team.
They're not.
NC State's all right. But, if you don't come to play every week, someone's going to knock you off.
That's right. It ain't like Miami doesn't have talent.
That's true.
San Diego State knocked off Air Force 20-14. I'm pretty sure you didn't see any of that.
I didn't see any of that. Pittsburgh looking real good against Clemson. DJ, I don't know how to say his name.
He's regressed.
He's regressed. He's not good. He got benched.
Nope.
Clemson's defense without Brian Barisi is a completely different animal. They will get run on. Run back number 6 from Pittsburgh looked real good to run the football. Pickett looked good throwing it. Defensively, they were all right. They let Clemson and DJ score late to kind of make it a little bit closer than it was. But Pittsburgh looks good. They got a 3-game lead on that side of the division, staring down, looking ahead, I guess, to a showdown with Wake Forest in the ACC championship game in Charlotte. So that'd be kind of a good game to watch, see what happens there. They're 6-1. They're ranked number 23. Why are they 6-1 and ranked number 23? Because their losses to Western Michigan or somebody like that. Western Michigan, Central Michigan, somebody like that. Not a good loss.
Right. Moving right along, Purdue lost to Wisconsin 30-13.
Wisconsin's bipolar,
you never know who's going to show up.
Which Wisconsin you're going to get when you turn the game on.
We talk about the University of Texas San Antonio game, but no one cares.
Yeah, I never even saw that war at all.
It was like ESPN the Ochos when that one
Yeah.
Let's talk about next week's games. Right off the bat, I was mentioning it, Brett, earlier. Cincinnati against Tulane is at noon next week. You can get a ticket for that game for $3. When's the last time the number 2 ranked team in the country was playing on the road in
New Orleans?
In New Orleans, yes.
You can get a ticket for $3.
$3. One of the big games next week, Michigan State's at noon next week. Why do they play this game?
I don't know.
I don't get it.
I'll never figure it out. One of my good buddies, Jason's a huge Ohio State fan. I asked him, your biggest rival is Michigan. Why do you guys always play that game at noon? He said, simple. We don't want to have to wait all day to whoop that ass. Excellent response and answer to my question. However, the Big Ten likes to throw their big matchups at noon. It's like, they have that noon slot. That's their best game of the week. They know that the SEC and the ACC aren't going to put their marquee matchups at noon, so they get the slot. I still think it's stupid. Yeah. But that's going to be a hell of a game in East Lansing. Mm-hmm. Number 6 versus number 8.
That's a big time matchup. And
I'm going with Michigan winning that game, with the Flying Mel Tuckers are going to come to play.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. Iowa's taking on Wisconsin at noon.
Iowa's got something to prove after that loss to Penn State. Penn State lost yesterday to an unranked Illinois team. That loss is going to look bad. They got to rebound.
If they do, Baylor takes on Texas at noon.
Baylor's got one conference loss, and they're right in the thick of things with the Big 12 championship game.
Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh.
Miami and Pittsburgh.
Right. Let's see. Illinois got Rutgers. Let's see what else. Oh, Georgia against Florida, 3:30.
Georgia-Florida game, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville, Florida. 3:30 on CBS. Number 1 ranked Georgia versus unranked Florida. But you know what? This kind of rivalry, throw those rankings right out the freaking window.
Who knows how
I hate saying that. That's massively cliche. I can't stand it. Yeah. But it's kind of true. Weird stuff happens in Jacksonville. We've been to that game a couple times. Should be a fun game to watch. I'm looking forward to it. I believe Mullen just named Richardson the starter, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I saw that yesterday. I could have sworn I saw that where it was like he's going to be the starter the rest of the way, which probably makes Florida a little bit better in my opinion.
I would agree.
He's not as good as a passer, but he's a little bit better of a runner than Emory Jones, who's right from here in LaGrange. A little bit better runner than he is.
Right. Oklahoma, Texas Tech at 3:30. Oregon against Colorado at 3:30 as well.
That's 3 games right there. Number 1, Georgia versus unranked Florida. Unranked Texas Tech at number 4, Oklahoma. Unranked Colorado at number 7, Oregon. These are 3 top 10 teams against unranked teams. Cover the spread. Put the game to rest by halftime. Get your depth guys some playing time in the second half. That's what elite teams do, and I'll be watching all 3 of these games and see if they can do that.
Right.
My guess is Oklahoma's going to be in a dogfight by the 4th quarter.
I agree. Nobody plays defense in the Big 12.
No.
It's sad.
It's like they don't practice tackling. It's like they just skip it in practice.
A big game at the beginning of the season probably would have been Florida State Clemson.
Yep. Now 2 unranked opponents with multiple losses each team.
You could get a ticket for $19.
Florida State versus Clemson. Who would have thought tickets were going to be $19 for this game? How the mighty have fallen.
Right. Purdue takes on Nebraska at 3:30 as well. Purdue's got to get right after that undisappointing loss this past week. Wake Forest against Duke. I'm going to go ahead and say that's a win. Probably. But then again, who knows?
$25. You can get a ticket for the game, 4 o'clock.
We could ride up. We could drive there.
It's at Wake Forest.
Yeah, so it was middle of North Carolina. Ole Miss against Auburn, 7 o'clock.
Number 10
versus 18.
Versus 18 is at Auburn. Jordan Hare is a weird place to play. Yep. 7 p.m. start. I have a feeling that Ole Miss is going to be on the losing end of some very, very, very questionable calls in that game.
Very questionable. Kentucky against Mississippi State. Kentucky, after that loss to Georgia, they got a bye this week, didn't they?
Yes, they did have a bye.
Okay, so they're coming back.
Half the SEC East had byes this week. They should win that game.
They should. Mike Leach had these guys playing pretty good against Vandy. But, it's Vandy, so who knows. Oklahoma State's going to try to get right against Kansas. It'll be at 7. SMU will try to stay undefeated against Houston at 7 o'clock as well. Penn State against Ohio State. That's the 7:30 game. We'll see. I don't think
So,
Penn State's
so they went from number 7 to number 20.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State is going to put up 30 plus on Penn State.
Yeah.
It's in Penn State.
No.
I mean, excuse me, it's at Ohio State. Yeah, I think this is going to go very, very badly for Penn State.
Yeah. BYU's taking on Virginia. Isn't Bronco
Mendenhall.
And that's the old coach at BYU. Yeah, okay.
And BYU lost again the other day.
Yeah.
No. They beat, who'd they beat?
That's a 10-15 game.
Yeah, they beat somebody yesterday. I thought so.
Maybe they weren't ranked, so it didn't pop
remember.
Up. They're 25 in the country now. But Fresno State, where you were high on,
North Carolina plays at Notre Dame. That could be a pretty good game. North Carolina keeps losing, but they're still talented offensively.
And sooner or later, they're going to actually show up.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
What happened to Sam Howell? Is he still playing?
He's still playing. He's good, but their defense is pretty much abysmal. I think all the guys left and went to the NFL.
Yeah. And the late game of the season next Saturday will be Stanford Washington. It'll be at 10:30. So
I probably won't even be watching that game.
We'll probably.
I'll watch that. The UCLA Utah game will be good because Utah is still fighting for the Pac-12 South, and I'll probably watch that one.
UCLA's playing for pride. So that concludes this week's episode. Anything you want to add?
Man, it's coming down to it, man.
Yeah.
It's one more month till the season's over.
Yeah.
It's getting, like I said, with the Big 12 and the Big 10, the meat of their schedule, like at least for the top teams, is all coming starting this Saturday and through November. So we're really going to see teams like Ohio State and Oklahoma try to separate themselves, see what happens. Can Baylor hang around? Can Oklahoma State hang around? We'll see. Ohio State's got the gauntlet. Yeah. They got Penn State, then Purdue, then Michigan State, and then Michigan. 4 tough games, the toughest games on their schedule since the Oregon game, obviously. But, hey, Penn State don't look good. So that game kind of looked a lot better last week than it does today. So
I'm assuming they were overlooking Illinois. So you can think about Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, we keep mentioning the Big 10 and the Big 12. They're the most competitive conferences right now. I think the SEC, I don't really see too much upheaval. I could be wrong, but I don't really see too much upheaval. I think it's kind of going to be Georgia and Alabama, and I believe what we saw yesterday with the ACC, it's going to be Pittsburgh and Wake Forest, most likely for the ACC championship. So those two conferences things could shake up, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in the Big 10 and the Big 12.
Right. Well, you guys have a good week.
See you guys.